funding by the JPA. That's how the process should be.
If you wanted a name,
Yeah.
my suggestion would be Denise Cooper.
But she is not a town staff, and she
No,
is
she's
a
not.
committee. So you want, like, you don't want a committee member
But
to
if
take
it's-
possession of
If
the
it's
fund.
town
It
staff,
should
it has to
be.
be you.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Well, it could be the city manager.
why would we change it from being Denise, or Louise, I'm sorry, whoever I'm talking about.
I think personally, my recommendation is there's gotta be a check and a balance
Yeah.
in this. You got $6 million, soon to be $8 million. There's gotta be a check and a balance. We just can't decide, and you can't say Mike Kashawagi has the right to sign it because he can charge all of his people to the library, okay?
Yeah.
That's self-serving, isn't it? And we can't say, well, the city manager, because the city manager, he's got authority to move money around all the time, and this money is specifically earmarked, so he doesn't have authority to move that. So, honestly, I think it could potentially be, if you have a check and a balance, then it could be perhaps somebody in the county library system. And all I'm saying is that they just need to get an accounting. That's all they need to do, and just.
What we could do, my recommendation is basically saying that since the library, as the Vice Mayor mentioned, has so much funds sitting in the account, and to make sure that both sides are aware of the spending, we could make sure that the invoice is routed to Korean for approval and first, and so we will see signature from the town staff and from the library JPA to make sure that everybody is aware of the spending.
Yeah, and I don't even think it needs to be on a regular basis. Send it to them quarterly, this is how we allocate it, and if they have any questions and they want to debate, then they come down and have a meeting, and then there may need to be a book transfer, okay, if they don't agree with it. But I think that they should get some sort of accounting anyway, and they should see the budget, and then they should be able to get an accounting, maybe on a
Don't
quarterly
you
basis.
send them that, right?
So far, I've been only sending it to Denise and Ginny.
And is
Right.
it detailed? Is it
Yes,
detailed?
with all the AP history of all the, just like our item number 9, plus the detailed child balance and revenue and expenditure balance sheet.
Yeah, I know, but see, my thing was, is that, or we had staff costs and things like that. I mean, I think that their question is, who is this?
We don't really, at the present time, I know one of the council member, Carlson, had brought it up before, that there should be cost allocation and staff time charged to the library fund for providing the service, and I believe had requested that former Public Works Director Duncan Jones look into that matter, but that was never take off, and when Duncan retired. So we have asked, I think that have been now passed on to Mike Kashiwaki.
Okay, well, I think that that's a fair request, and that's a fair
Yeah.
request, and we should
And-
ask Mike to do it, because, you know, there is management of the people that are doing
Right.
things for the
And so far,
library.
that
would
has
also-
not happened yet.
I would also have Denise Cooperman
Yeah,
sign off, even though she's not an employee. I sign off all kinds of stuff, I'm not an employee.
okay.
And, you know, so you don't need to be an employee to sign off all kinds of things.
Okay,
And I would say Denise, I think, should, for the spending, I mean, maybe that's not the legal authority, but if she doesn't approve it, then in my mind, we should question it.
And she's with the county.
No,
She's a-
Denise is
she's
the
a
head of the
committee
library
member,
committee,
citizen.
she's also a
She's
CPA.
a town person.
She's a resident.
She's a resident, but
Resident.
not staff and not
Not
county.
staff.
Not council.
No,
I just think,
I don't know you
my
guys.
instinct
I know,
says
I
the
know.
council should be the final.
Yeah.
I think so.
And I like
I
the
think more
statute
than
of what it
anything.
says.
So the council is the final on everything, you know?
Well, I know, but evidently not on this, because you're not approving anything,
This
right?
is a big
The
deal.
council already
It's a big
approved
deal.
expenditures for the architects,
For the year?
For the architect.
for the architects. We already approved it.
But right now, Denise then signs off on that the architects performed the work or had the meetings and things like that. So just for her to get a report, I mean, I think that all it is a check and balance.
yeah.
Obviously, you know, if it becomes problematic, I mean, some of the personalities that we used to have around town can get a little persnickety and start to, well, why Jim Massey, you know, or whatever, what did he do for us? That will become problematic, and we'll have to stop that. But I think that there needs to be some sort of fiduciary oversight.
Okay, so what did we conclude? Who has the signing authority? This
Well, let me
is
ask you a
going
question.
around.
Who normally authorizes expenditures for special funds?
It's usually central. If it's centralized, finance director has the last look at it. And if it's non-centralized, then the department heads would either the department head signs off, or the department heads will designate.
Yeah, but these are non-staff people that they're talking about. These are citizens who are on committees, like I'm on the rail committee. If I,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem I should be able to approve anything.
You should be able to request information or have, ask, give your input, but you should not be signing off.
Well, isn't that true for the library fund?
Yes. That's why my recommendation is that the city manager, because, let me go back to Mark's question. We are decentralized at the present time, so individual department head that oversee that function is responsible for approving the invoice. But
Who is?
the individual department heads. Yeah, so say all the capital improvement project will be under public works, but anything over $15,000 will go to city council for approval, because the department head have authority really only up to 750.
Right, so that's true with the library fund.
Yes,
So the council is the one who's approving.
yes, anything over 15,000 has to be city council, anything above 750 up to 15,000 is the city manager.
So isn't that your answer on both of them?
Yeah, that's what the.
Yeah, but that's his concern. His concern is the city manager can
Hey,
reallocate.
he's our CEO. If he can't trust him, then we can get
Well,
him.
that's why it's kind of hard to have the conversation when he's not here.
Right.
But my concern is we're going, I don't know who runs the library from the city standpoint as it is. If
Always
anyone,
public work.
okay, it's always public work.
Yeah.
So the question really is what's Bill's concern about reallocation? Is there something we're not aware of? And two, why would we change the process rather than having one person in particular have ownership to the whole thing? That's what I don't get.
Well, that's, he's gonna have to go back and explain it.
Yeah, I don't
It's
understand
hard
that.
to, because you're going to have different functions, and the way our purchasing policies currently is we're decentralized. So that's why you assign individual department authority and hold that person accountable. And the way that we are trying to do it, even I've been saying this for a couple of years, is to even to delegate the authority to the finance director. Sometimes it creates conflict because in the purchasing policy, it says the purchasing officer for the town is the city manager. So as a finance director, how can you override a purchasing officer's decision if he is
But
or she
Louise,
is?
I've had long discussions with John over this.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you know. And I think we have to make some changes. I think we have to make some changes regarding the
Yeah.
authority
Yeah.
of the chief financial
Yeah.
officer. And you and I have talked about this
Yeah,
as
we
well,
talk about this many times.
because,
Yeah,
I mean, invoices in my mind, at every council meeting, we get the list of this, of all these expenses, but, you know, so what? So it's money,
I agree.
it's
It's impossible.
and my feeling is very simply that these need to be approved at the invoice level,
yeah,
not after they're being spent.
right,
So I have two questions.
sure.
Is this considered part of our agenda? Are we within bounds of what we're supposed to be talking about here?
Yes and no. I mean, I think we're extrapolating from this.
If we are going a little bit into
We're going
item
more
5.
detailed.
Well, yeah, because, so
You know,
that, good.
But I think the issues are related to the function and auditing procedures in this town.
Agree. Oh, no, I like the conversation. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah, I
we're
like it
not
too, but
trailing
I
out of
think
bounds
we
here.
can-
Second
yeah.
is, what are you concerned about? I'm
Well, we
sensing
still understand why.
you're concerned
why the
about
city manager
something.
and all-
I can't figure out what you're worried about, because you're that or you aren't worried
On
about
which
it.
one? On the funds?
On the funds, and you use the example of the city manager being able to
Oh,
reallocate.
okay, the city manager can reallocate, so
Right.
he's the guy, but the thing is I see those funds as special funds that have been earmarked. They're part of a tax.
Yeah.
A tax base that is not designated for town operations.
Agreed.
So it really can't be reallocated.
No, the city manager
But
can't.
why are they
You
reallocated?
can't reallocate them because that changes the budget. To change the budget needs council.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I can't I still don't understand what you're worried about, because it sounds like you guys have control of this as the council. There's nothing, I mean, does anything come out of the fund every year? I mean, what comes out of it?
We pay for utility, the maintenance, like landscape, pest control, or when they need work in the carpet, cleaning the carpet and all that, so it's.
That's it?
maintenance.
So what's the expense every year?
Those are pretty much the expenditure until
$1 million.
recently.
It's $1 million.
Yeah,
It's
until
$1 million
recently.
a year.
For pest control?
No, small sum. We spend about, Overall
I'll take it out.
expenditure without overhead,
Check out the
it's
better
about
company.
$34,000 to $50,000 the most.
Okay, but all I'm
Well,
saying.
the thing is
Yeah.
that the library believes that's their money. It can only be spent in Atherton for library type activities.
Which is great.
We do allocate labor, we do allocate portions of purchases, all right, that come through, and they would like to make sure that they have oversight on it, or at least are cognizant of what the deal is. So that's,
They being
the library.
the library, and the librarian, or
Yes.
whoever
The
this is,
JPA.
who is a county employee?
She's a county
Yeah.
employee.
Okay, all right, so the county employee, so.
They just feel
Let's
that,
get it.
their position is, doesn't that make sense to you, if it's, that we would be able to say, yes, verily, yea, verily, the money is being spent on library activities? Or it's been explained to us, and I think it's a reasonable request, and I think that, fund management should be there. Again, the other
I
issue.
also think that Mike Gashawagi has actually been doing a pretty good job as far as the library funds. And he works closely with Karen, who's a librarian here. So I
Just
think
let's get her report, that's all.
we want to be careful we don't make too big an issue of this, because I think at the moment it's working quite well.
But so my request is that we start sending an accounting
To
in
Corinne?
detail. Corinne or Denise, as Jim was
I
saying.
Yeah,
can't
Denise
support
already
sending
getting
it to private residents. The library is a county function, it should go to Denise, it's under Public Works. He's
No,
been
that's-
approved
so what do you
to do
want?
it. So, no, the report's fine, I just,
Yeah,
report.
you know,
Yeah.
send it to the county librarian, if she wants to share it with Denise or me or
That's fine.
anybody
That's
else in
great.
town,
That's
that's
great.
great.
So send it to the library, and this is how we spend your money.
So don't send it to Denise, she'd be getting it as a steering committee.
Well, I don't, we can take a vote on it, I
Who's
really don't
Denise?
care, as long as there's
But
some
you said she's
oversight.
getting it already?
Yeah.
Who is she?
Denise.
Denise and
Government,
Jeannie.
she's the
Nice.
head
Denise
of
and
the
Jeannie are
library.
doing it now. So we're saying that
She's a citizen.
She's a citizen.
She's a resident.
resident.
She has no ability to spend the money, she's just an oversight.
She's a
Right.
task force.
Yeah, she can't authorize somebody to cut a check, although she does authorize invoices because she's the one on the day-to-day basis
Right, okay.
that is watching over the project.
So do we have any other funds like this? Is this the only one?
Well,
Every other
from
fund.
time to time, we may have one, we did have the environmental
Yeah.
committee, there's $5,000
This is
there
the
now.
biggest.
Yeah.
But this is, but no, but not the biggest, the only
Well,
one, it's a
Russell-
special
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah.
Parcel tax is a special fund.
Right.
Parcel taxes.
Right.
Mhm.
We have,
Just have the letterhead sent it to the librarian, whether Denise sees it or not, I can care less, I just don't.
I didn't understand, Bill, what your point was.
Yeah, I
Now
agree, I agree.
Now I do, that's
so
right.
send it to Corinne, do you stick to the
Corinne.
committee,
Send it
still
to
want to
Corinne.
send
Just
it?
send it to Corinne and she can
She'll-
make
she'll-
distributions.
Okay, so no Denise, no Jeannie Lyons?
No, I think that Jim's got a good point,
Okay.
you know. It's,
So we never did answer though what the point was about where the buck actually stops.
But
If-
but
unless
your
that's
concern,
another
Bill,
stop time.
is the city manager can allocate it someplace that he shouldn't?
No,
he can allocate costs to it. He can allocate costs to it.
He can't change the budget
But he can,
without council.
Right, but if he charges expenses to an account that is clearly not consistent, then he's in error. And if you don't like what he's doing, then you replace him, but I mean, you don't,
but now, well,
You
now
don't
we've got to
say you
check
don't
it out.
trust him.
No, Greg, I wasn't saying that. What I was saying is that there was no check and balance.
well, you got the city manager and the city attorney, I mean, the city finance director, they're the two that are checking each other. I mean, if she got something that was inappropriate
Yeah.
to be charged to the
Yeah.
library, what would you do?
You send it back and question it.
But would she know, Bill's point is would she know? And
Oh.
that's,
She would know.
Yeah, finance department, finance director does have a responsibility more than the city manager, because the city manager is more on the operation. Finance director responsibility is to make sure that the revenue and the expenditure are properly approved and charged to the right fund and for its intended purpose. So the finance director should know what the JPA agreement is and what can be spent under that agreement. And if anything that doesn't look right, that person should question it, send it back and determine, or even contact Corinne and say, is this for library? So finance does have a responsibility to ensure that it's things in the right place.
Who signs the red letter?
Town manager and finance director.
Both of them.
Correct, both.
So he's got both of them. They're responsible to the public and the council. They sign a rep letter every year that what they did was proper. So if he's not doing something that's proper, that's an administrative problem, that's not a.
Yeah, I think we don't want to do that. I have no reason to believe he's doing anything improper.
So you're saying you don't want to send a report of how we're spending the money to the library?
No,
We
I'm
are
not
saying-
saying that.
No, he's just saying he don't wanna-
Then if somebody has a problem, if the library has the problem, or the librarian, or if she distributes it to other people, and then there's a hue and cry, and says, why are we getting charges?
No, I'm
They'll come
saying-
in and they get a
Bill,
review.
I'm saying send the report.
Yeah, okay,
Send the report.
yeah, fine.
I'm just saying, we want to be, I have no reason to believe that John is spending money
Absolutely.
that he shouldn't be spending in any way whatsoever.
Okay, let's move on. I think we've all agreed that.
Pretend this is Major A and send the affected county library report.
Okay, so we're sending the report to Corinne and she distributes it accordingly. Let's go.
Hey, who's taking minutes on this stuff?
It's being recorded.
Police department.
So,
You got that on the record?
That guy.
All right.
You have any public comment?
You're gonna send us a copy of that so we know what the hell we did?
so the next
You can
thing.
get it on
Bill.
YouTube. If you
No,
can read
no,
it.
because there was another issue that Jim brought up, I'd just like to finish up on that.
Okay.
Okay, so Jim brought up a very valid point, when I apologize, I take the call, but it's something that we have brought up several times, both Jim and myself, and I think almost every council member has brought up, okay? That every month we see the check registers, the money is already spent. And what we need to see is the invoices. So I guess, do any towns actually present the invoices to the council that you're aware of before they sign it, or is it always after the fact? Because to me, it's kind of, after the fact, it's kind of useless.
Okay, as far as I know, no, they do not present invoices, but however, some cities, they do have a designated council member who goes in before the council meeting, and that person selectively would ask for check payments and would ask for supporting document. So it can be invoices, and they would actually, that designated council member actually does some kind of random audit to make sure that the checks has supporting document.
I mean, I've been trying to get this done,
Right.
so it's Bill, for a long, long time, for
And I
a
think,
year and a half
Yeah.
at least.
and I think that's a really good control.
Yeah. I mean, we're
Because,
late
yeah.
ducks when we're doing that.
I think it's,
I look at the invoice. I
I
remember.
don't know, if somebody
So
wanted to
are
do
they-
that, fine, but
are
to
they
designate
available
somebody
to
to
the
do it.
council limbo?
You're really
So
taking
Bill,
that control away from the city manager and the finance.
So you're
officer.
saying you're just getting a rollout of the invoices and you don't have the invoices in front of you, but don't you have access to invoices, or are you just saying that they're all in random places?
You know,
that-
what we get is we get a list, and Louise does a great job, she's changed the report for us several times to provide more information, but it says a check, it's got the vendor, or who we wrote the check to, and it's got all the line items of what it was for, like a permit fee, this, that, but the money's gone, and we say, well, what was this for? Or like, the mayor had spoken to, a department that says, we're not gonna do this anymore. Next month, there we see checks for it again. And so we say, well, I thought we'd stop that. Well, we just did one more month. And so there's no fiscal control when it's out of control.
Mhm.
Or it's already paid.
So our thought is that the invoices come in, and as opposed to, seeing the checks that were written 2 months ago, okay, or for the invoices that came 60 days before, because, they take them in, then they write the checks, and then they come to the council. So it's almost a 60 to 90 day period.
Right.
And so if we get the invoices and we list those invoices and they go to the council for approval, the council then approves them. Most of the time it's on the consent calendar, it just goes. It's very rare is there a question, but if there is a question, we want to get the question answered and agreed before we approve it, before the check is written.
Well, you can't, the check has already been written.
Well, that's today, but we're asking for it to happen in.
Proactively.
That's been the problem, and I must admit,
That's like, is that considered micromanaging then?
Yeah,
Or-
I think so.
You know?
I think so, guys, I think you're going.
You know, I mean, Bill, and then the other thing, you had another problem if the little scenario you described is accurate. If that council meeting, the mayor or whoever is saying, don't do it this way anymore, and it keeps being done that way, that's a different problem,
Yeah,
than just you know, this
Well,
check, writing the check, you've got a different problem.
Yes, as far as micromanaging goes, I have to sign off all those expenses and approve all those expenses. Once they've been spent, there's not much difference between that and signing off on invoices, as far as micromanaging goes. I mean, I sign off on those things, and half the time I don't know what I'm signing off on.
Right.
Because,
How can you?
so as far as micromanaging goes, it's exactly the same. That if you sign off on the invoices, you could say that was micromanaging, but it's no different than signing off on the expenditures.
Let me ask the auditor, do you know any city councils where they actually review the individual invoices
And we just say-
Before,
after?
after, yes, but they do a random, they
do it
Before,
on an
before
audit
the
basis.
check got paid,
no, no,
after.
yes, after.
But do they look at the invoice or just look at the listing of the invoices?
Most of the time, they just look at, when it goes to council, it's just, they look at the list of the checks that's already been paid out.
Here's been my point.
There are some cities where they hold it, where they will run the check, but before they distribute it out. But that's a few of them.
Individual checks or?
Correct,
All the checks.
before they send out the checks.
No, so they have the council approve it and then they mail the checks the next day.
Right, exactly.
That'd be okay.
Yeah,
But here's the point I think I'd like to make.
Yeah.
That in general, in any business, the way you handle this is that if you have a strong financial CFO and a financial department, they approve the invoices before they're allowed to be sent out. And I'm not even saying that we have to do it, that the council has to do it. But at the moment, those invoices are not even approved by the finance department. And that has bothered me. Last city manager kept promising me that he was gonna do it, he never did it.
What is he saying? You're saying you're not looking at the invoices?
I would, because right now we are decentralized and the purchasing officer is the city manager. So once the city manager approves an invoice, finance basically just process an invoice, because I understand where the mayor, we have many discussion about this private industry model, which you have two branches, you have the CEO and the CFO. But currently the way the town is run and the purchasing policy is draft, it gives the sole vested the purchasing power and approval process to the city manager. So you create a structural difficulty for a finance director reporting to a city manager and trying to say, you cannot approve this invoice because.
Is that on all invoices or those over a certain amount?
All invoices, anything up below 15,000, the city manager can purchase without city council's approval.
Right, but without your authority?
Yeah, because he is the sole purchase. He can delegate the authority to an individual, but the city manager can solely purchase anything up to 15,000 and say pay.
Or if we said, if we hire a CPO, then he is the procurement officer, and he has to sign off on them. But today, this is
Because
Lee
it's a
says,
reporting structure.
you know, and.
Is that how you wrote it up, the revised? Is
I
that-
wrote it up that there'd be a purchasing agent or a purchasing manager, but until there's the city manager, somebody has to be in charge. And the city manager could delegate it down, but I had it in the policy that the approval of the invoices had to be, if it's delegated down to a department head, the department head plus the finance director. I had the finance
Right,
director
right.
written in as having to do it.
And they're not doing that today?
I think that
They're
may got changed
They've
on the
never
finance.
been doing that, despite
Never.
the fact
Okay, so
that
I think
ever
this
since
goes
I've
back,
been on the council, I've been saying this is not the way you run a business,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
What is the normal process on other cities? Is it city, the mayor of San Jose, I'm sure, does not review invoices.
Right, correct.
And
So,
the mayor of Belmont or someplace like that, I'm sure, or not the mayor, but the city manager does not review invoices. Now, am I right?
correct, yes, they do, but for small town, usually, sometimes what we look at, we say, okay, someone has to initiate the person who initiate the purchase order and the person who approves it should be separate.
And that's not how it is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, once it's been authorized on the purchase order, doesn't the CFO, is she the one that can write the check once he
I
gets,
rewrote it.
Correct.
without the city manager approval?
Once
once the purchase order is approved by the city manager or whoever the official one is, does the check have to go back to him under 15,000?
No, the city manager can approve a purchase up to 15,000 and approve an invoice, and we just cut the check and mail it.
And once the contract is let,
Yeah.
he can also approve changes to that contract.
Up to
Maybe we'll-
15,000, yeah.
I mean, this
There's
is.
been more than that, as you know, because I wrote to you about a few of those. There've been more than that, and they're more than $15,000, and he sent you a letter and said, with a signature, and said, pay it.
But it's
Correct.
all the city, the purchasing officer is always city manager?
No.
Who are normally the purchasing officer for cities?
It's usually initiated by the different departments.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
But in our,
This is no
The
different from business.
account managers
I
are
wrote it
usually
up like a
not
business,
involved in it.
In a business, the businesses I've run, I've always had a very strong CFO.
yeah.
Actually, the same guy in a couple of businesses I took with
Yeah,
me.
I like to be strong,
And it gets to the state where
but it's gonna have to be.
people go to him for approval of the invoices, or her for approval of the invoices. And if he's good and he's strong, they get the message quickly that they're not gonna be able to go around him, and if he doesn't approve it, it's dead.
Yeah.
What we have done is we've sort of never, I'm not saying we didn't have a strong CFO, but we've never allowed that situation to take place. In other words, if we have, and possibly because we don't have enough forces in the financial department at the moment, I know you've had far too much to do, Louise. So if we get to the States, no different from business, all invoices have to go and be approved by the finance department before they're allowed to go forward.
I think,
I thought that was Bill's plan, it would get signed off by the department, get approved by finance and the city manager. Isn't that what you wrote?
That's exactly what I
Bill and
Why
I
don't we
have
implement it?
we've had these plans. We've
Well,
had these
I
plans
mean,
all
spend
over.
hours
Well,
getting that
If we've got
thing
two
together.
city council members here, why can't we push this forward, you know?
I don't know, I've,
mean,
I've
it sounds
certainly
I don't know
tried.
what it is that we're pushing forward, it sounds like you're doing it.
Well,
It's
it's a
already,
different-
something that's already been done, so this committee spent
Several meetings.
6 or 7 months of time, and Bill was nice enough to contribute his time and authorship of a lot of it to try and propose something. I assumed that it was already done.
Me
That's
too.
why I haven't said a thing
Me
about
too.
it,
Well, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's a little frustrating.
You should be.
It's
You
still-
should
I think the
be.
city manager
but
should
you
be
should
there.
be completely hacked off. I would be.
Yeah.
No, but why can't, so here's the thing, you guys, Rose is right. You guys,
You two.
why can't you put it on the council agenda, get it done, and then let's get going so that there's no nebulous, because I think,
We'll give John the opportunity to either get it done or put it on the council.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I would.
yeah, you look just
Well,
as
it's gonna have to
frustrated.
go to the council for approval.
But that's
And, you know, and
Yeah, what's wrong?
Louise has said in the current rewrite that's been floating around, the part about the finance director signing off or being part of it, if it's delegated down to a department head, has been removed.
I'm not sure it's there or not.
So we
I
need
haven't seen the
to,
latest.
the council needs to actually
We need to see
review
it.
what they wanna put forward.
No, you can't,
It
you
hasn't
can't
been-
have a department head sign
We
off
wanna
on
see-
it, that
we wanna
relieves
see
him of
what
any
the-
responsibility.
I understand that.
But, you know, the real key here is to have a strong finance department. I mean, the CFO that I had, if I had been doing something wrong, he was independent, he would have gone to my board and told them.
But you're.
That could be another
That's
discussion.
another issue.
If we're gonna be hiring another finance director, I think it should be dual reporting.
I think that's right.
That
And I
puts,
think
that
that we
puts
should
her,
put that on the agenda.
she's in
as
a
well.
terrible position, the way this town has it set up now.
I agree.
Her boss is the purchasing manager.
Right.
What's she gonna do? I mean, that's
That's
a
exactly right.
total
That is
lose-lose.
exactly
Oh,
right.
yeah.
That's a total lose-lose.
We've had a lot of discussion.
And that's what we've been trying to
Yeah,
change, and
yeah.
I've been trying to push it, and, you know, of
Right.
course, the town has had a lot of, to Bill Connor's defense, there's been a lot going on,
Of course.
okay?
Yeah, of course.
But it has never become a priority.
Okay, well, that's what, you guys, that's up to you, I guess.
Yeah, it's up to you, this is gonna be more critical as time goes on, and it's not getting any better, okay? It's not gonna get any better unless you push it through, so it's up to you two guys,
Alright,
okay?
All right.
So we're all on the same page, we all
Okay.
agree.
Do we need a motion of some kind?
I don't.
We're all on the same page. Okay, Louise, you wanna keep moving, okay, people need to get going.
Yeah, but, oh, okay. So on this On this audit
You didn't hear
report,
what I said.
the only thing that changes is we implement the gas fee 54.
We're just rather
And that is on page. Page 17.
And what about, I can hear you, Rose. What-
Okay.
or Louise, what was
Yeah,
that?
page 17, we are no longer have a fund balance like the old way, used to be like restricted, unrestricted, and designated. Now, if you look at the fund balance section, that's a note 7, under gas fee 54, which is the new reporting requirement, we are now dividing the fund balance into non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and assigned. Okay, and this kind of tell you where general fund reserve is. We have $6.2 million fund balance as of June 30th, 2011, and of that, $3.5 million is considered unassigned.
What does that mean?
Unassigned means no restriction, or had not been committed, had not been set aside for a specific purpose.
So it's just sitting there, it's just cash we have sitting somewhere.
It mostly is cash, yeah.
But it's rainy day money, or it's whatever.
The rainy day money, we actually, we call that is the 1,751,000 is 15% for emergency disasters.
Oh.
But keep in mind the unassigned fund balance, the town is saying that no matter what, how bad the economic situation is, the town will always maintain 20% in our fund balance for any purpose.
Did we raise it to 20%? I thought it was 15 at one.
15% is for individual category like emergency disaster
Well,
or used to
unassigned
be
is 20%.
budget
That was
stabilization.
2 months ago.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
20% of what?
I completely-
20% of general fund expenditure, so it will be 20%
15.
of, if you go to page 19, will be 20% of the 11,678,000. That is where you need to keep as your
20%.
minimum balance.
So
And
you're over that?
yeah.
You're well over that.
Okay. But so this is the new requirement. I would like to point that out. The restricted amount, the 938,000, that is the building department operating reserve they have as of June 30th, 2011. Okay. The 1.7 is for emergency disaster. And the $14,000, I want to go a little bit to say that is, some of it is for the tennis fund.
Tennis program.
Yeah, because in this report, we have a special revenue fund called tennis fund. It really does not meet the new definition, so Mark Wong's firm have rolled that into general fund for financial statement reporting purpose. Okay?
All right, what about the, I thought that there was a building fund that
Yes.
had like 1.7.
Yeah, you're looking at it called Facility Construction Capital Project Fund.
Okay.
1,875,000 is restricted for the building department portion of the new town center.
Right.
That's
Or whatever we
whatever
decide
we
to do, but
decide.
the building is falling down.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the other $52,000 is just designated for facility construction, but it's not specifically related to the building department.
And may I ask just a very quick question?
Okay.
So as part of the building permit fee structure,
Mhm.
is a portion of every fee going to enhance and push that building replacement fund for the building department?
We
Is
have,
that a growing fund?
yes, we are continue to contribute about $153,000 a year. So in 2012, you will see that 1,875,000 go up by another 153,000.
So it'd be about 2 million.
Yeah, but we do have an amortization schedule for 20 years at 5% interest. So once we hit the amortization schedule of 20 years, then we'll stop contributing to this building replacement fund unless the future building cost is being estimated and we find out that we need more than.
Can the council action say we want to continue that and not, because we do want to continue that.
You need to, in order to continue, you have to have pretty much a solid project in hand, and you're not
Okay.
just setting money aside for, you have to have
Okay.
something to support it. Otherwise, in the future, you have to return the money if
Okay.
it's not being used.
Okay.
Return it to who?
Return to the fee payer,
To where?
to building fee. You have to reduce it in order to reduce your, refund the money.
But the moment we're
You're
reducing
not allowed to make money off of this.
reserves in the building fund,
Mm-hmm.
substantial.
Okay, and if I can have the committee look at page 19.
Yeah, I'm completely.
Okay, page 19 is the general fund, and I'm pleased to report that we ended the year better than we originally budgeted, because I know we project about $300,000 loss plus a $900,000 transfer to World Impact Fee Fund to reimburse them for some of the prior year's incorrect charges. So we were going to be short, but we actually ended the general fund for fiscal year 2011 with only use of fund balance of $412,575. Because the $902,000 to World Impact Fee Fund was to come out of reserve. So between 902 and 412, the difference is actually the rest of the operating result for the year that our revenue come in higher than expected. Okay.
What did you, have you transferred in now the unrefunded fees?
The World,
The road impact fees?
Where do we get the 5, Greg? And the answer you can clearly see is no.
the World Impact Fee, the auditor did accrue about close to $600,000 in fiscal year 2010. But in fiscal year 2011, they have reduced the accrual because the refund turned out to be not everybody applied for a refund. Out of 572,000, we only have to give out about 300 something, like 67 or 64%.
Does that include PPG?
PPG is in addition.
Okay, so it's
Right.
another 77.
Right, so if you go to, you would know, if you go to the back, let me just take you to World Impact Fee Fund, and that's something that the town, the public works director should look into it, because in the future, if you look at page, let me just go to page, Margaret is, okay. If you go to page 57,
57?
yeah, go to page 57. The World Impact